Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blue Star Rising, the Templar Awakening. Michael Henry Dunn here, welcoming you with my co-host, Reverend Maia Nartoomid. Hello, Maya.
Hi there. I think we have an exciting show today, and I'm just waiting to get started.
Yes, it is a deeper exploration of something that we focused on a couple of weeks ago, which is the sacred Ark of On, and traced its long history from before Lemuria and Atlantis, its original resting place in the Himalayas in Tibet. From there, the activational journey it undertook because it had to cross the ley lines to activate certain balancing factors when Atlantis began to destabilize. That, of course, was not enough to prevent the fate that Atlantis brought upon herself. And ultimately, after other journeys, it now resides in Mount Challenger in southern Colorado. And part of what Maya shared with us in the course of that journey, and she'll elaborate on it here, but I'm just going to give a little thumbnail of it, is that the nature of the energetics that were designed into the Ark, which were to help all of humanity remain in touch with our divine origin, with the essential essence of our being, of what's called the instra molecule, our unique link to the divine back through the blue star Rigel origins of much of human genetics. And that the unique nature of the original Ark was such that only priestesses could work with those energies because of the three pillars of the heart that are inherent in woman, whereas men have the one heart pillar, which made it simply electromagnetically dangerous, even fatal, for men to do the work that women were able to do in aligning their own heart chambers to the essential nature of the arc energies. And that led twice to, over the long history of the Ark, to an effort to thwart and prevent these energetics from having their full effect. It was tempered and tamped down so that men could work with it. And one thing and another, in the long history of the human race, we kind of messed it up. But now in this ascension timeline, this long suppressed way of working with the energies of the Ark is coming forward again. And so, Maya, if you would like to introduce this beautiful video that we're going to share with everyone, so that they can have an understanding of what they're about to see.
Yes. Well, the material that I put into the video, including the diagram, was part of a transmission that was given to me probably around 2005. And, I put it out in a little pamphlet, not a paper pamphlet, but a PDF for people. And, it was like, okay, that's nice. And I put it aside and went on to something else, And recently I came across it again and I went, oh my goodness. When I looked at it from the perspective of now, I thought, what was I thinking that I just put it aside like that? Because I saw how essential it was, how core it was into the whole dynamic of the human experience and the evolution of consciousness. So for whatever reason, I guess had blinders on then because it wasn't time for it. And now it is. So I brought it forward again. And I attempted to put it together in this little video to give you an idea of it basically. What I'm going to be doing, this video that you're going to see, it will be the little clip will be a video in my new series, the Ark of the Heart. And it's the first one in the series. So you will find at the bottom of the video here, you will find a link to that series. Right now, I only have 2 videos in it, the one you're going to see here and the second one, but there will be more. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can make sure and get in on all that later.
All right. And I just want to mention briefly that, this all does tie in as well to the Grail, and not just to the Grail of Arthurian legends, the Grail as the cup of Christ from the Last Supper, but the inherent Grail of the essence of the divine feminine, not only as part of an intrinsic nature of the divine and of the soul within us in our balance of sacred masculine and divine feminine, but very much as a function of the Ark of On, and how the essential nature of the human heart and the reflection of our own internal energies in the heart are reflected in the sacred ark, and can be worked with, and can help us embody the Grail, embody the perfect union of divine feminine and sacred masculine within the ark of our own hearts. So with that, we will now share with you the beautiful video, the Ark of the Heart that Reverend Maia has prepared. So we'll share that with you now.
In my presentation of the heart poles and their dynamics in the female and male physical bodies, I feel it vitally important to stress that the heart dynamic in the female body cannot become fully viable without interfacing with the male heart dynamic. The same is true of the male heart and its interactive function with the female heart poles. The Lemurian word for kiss was Kiv. This also means light or fire writing, the actual turning and moving of the heart's energy system, which produces what Stan Tenen and Dan Winters refer to in their research as the alphabet of the heart. For the Lemurians, a kiss was reserved for awakening another human being to the breath, the Hawaiian loha, of the one loving presence. In the heart of one human gender is the path to receive the kiss of the other. Therefore, it is as important for men and women to work with the opposite gender heart dynamic as it is their own. They may do this as each gender contains an astral version of the heart pole or poles, an accompanying schematic of the opposite polarity. The feminine poles of the heart form a sacred ark. This was known and understood as the central mystery of the lunar divine feminine mysteries. My Akashic insights have revealed to me that the first mechanical ark was given to the earth during the days of Atlantis by the blue star ultra-terrestrials of Rigel in the constellation of Orion. Yet this first ark was not given to the Atlanteans, but to the people who in that age occupied Tibet. These Tibetans were a mixture of strong blue star genetics and earth races of that time. They called themselves Sunborn, as they held the solar mysteries for the planet. Within the sacred center of the On is a chamber which contains a device that is a working facsimile of the human feminine heart ark. In the mechanism of the blue star Ark of Grace, there is a sphere that contains within it the three-pole dynamic of the feminine human heart. In this sphere, called the Katim, the charge of the moon heart pole is contained within a cobalt sphere, with the Gaia pole charges held by the two obsidian spheres. Through the Katim and certain other devices in the On, powerful energy transmissions from Rigel and Betelgeuse in Orion are brought to Earth. The Ark is still with the earth. It was gifted us to aid humanity in that age of spiritually surviving the deluge to come and the ultimate ascension of the planet in this current time. Here you see the diagram of the feminine heart arc. The first node, moon heart pole, allows the female to become the vessel not only for a child, but for the perpetuation of the creatrix current through the species. It is the special chip inserted into the heart arc mechanism which gives the whole Merkaba intelligence to interface with the creatrix field of Gaia. The second nodes, A and B, the Gaia poles. These heart poles act as small pulsars, reversing polarity between each other to bring through the holographic wave form of the Gaia field. The third node, creatrix waveform and Gaia field. The energy waveform coming out of the heart of Gaia, Earth, creates a field of its own generation. This field interacts with all life, sustaining and evolving it in accordance with the evolution of Gaia herself. The fourth nodes, A and B, left and right terminus, ventricles connecting the biophysical poles on the magnetic and cellular level. The fifth node is the vault of heaven, the womb of the goddess creatrix. The sixth node, labyrinth of On. On means both arc and holy light, or rather light beyond the spectrum of frictional matter, what Thoth refers to as the light that does not burn. Within the spiral labyrinth of the feminine heart arc is the gestating dynamic of the Christ child, the Christic power and presence of the pure soul dynamic. This gestation is processed in continuum by the creatrix waves moving through the Gaia field. The seventh node, solar pillar of light. The inseminating vehicle being drawn into the heart arc from the wellspring of the solar logos in the soul. The solar logos is a powerful generator of Christ awakening. As the solar pillar of light moves through the labyrinth of On and the Gaia field, it is the generator for the signals which open the birth canal in the dew crescent. Node 8 is the dew crescent. This crescent could be equated to the curve of the womb upon the pelvis. In the heart arc, it collects the dew or the mana being generated from the dynamic interface between the solar pillar of light moving through the heart moon and into and through the labyrinth. The dew mana is a form of prima matra, or first matter, containing rhodium and iridium. A variation of this substance is known in esoteric energy circles today as white powder gold. It can also be found in another variation in which I have previously called prima matra powder. However, the dew mana of the heart arc is composed of a specific mixture of rhodium, iridium, and other elements on a subatomic level. In this sense, it is the mother's milk of the heart, nourishing the Christ child in its labyrinth manger of light. The ninth node, solar rays of Hu. In Celtic mythology, Hu is a patriarch akin to Noah. Mary Kane, in her book The Glastonbury Zodiac, states that Hu was the teacher of mankind. One of his symbols was the arrowhead, the wedge of cuneiform writing. The giant Hu beheld 3 pillars of light on which were inscribed all science and knowledge. From the Akashic Library of Thoth, I received that Hu represents solar intelligence spawned from the superluminal generative power of the Holy Trinity, source, receptor, unifier. Within the dynamic of the feminine heart arc, the solar rays of Hu are the primary Christic penetration of the world, reality, earth, by the Queen of Heaven, the Mother Principle. From her womb is rayed the hope of the world. The solar rays of Hu are the strength of the female heart and her body and mind. The ability of the woman to endure, to give birth, to open her body, mind, and heart to creation. The 10th nodes A and B, 6 Magda rays. The hope of the world is flanked by the 6 Magda rays. From Thoth I received many years ago that Magda is a name for the feminine heart of the earth in its form of having been unrevealed to the world. The Magda, then, is an energy dynamic of the central sun atoma of the planet. The central sun of Earth is, of course, within the solar mysteries, but it is an essentially feminine being. It is a solar feminine. Here we have the higher mysteries unfolding, where solar and lunar refers to energy sequencing and not a specific gender polarity. The Magda is that aspect of the solar divine feminine of the earth, whose time has not yet come to be revealed to the world. She was shown to me symbolically as the hag, with a dark veil upon her. Yet when the veil was lifted, the radiant beauty of a woman in full bloom was revealed. The Magda rays protect and nourish the solar intelligence. Whether in a female or male body, attuning to and more fully integrating with the feminine arc of the heart is essential in the ascension process. Thoth's definition of ascension in this context is the quantum burst of light being activated through the quantum cube or holographic intelligence field within the DNA. This burst is ignited in the heart, which is the actual seat of the holographic intelligence field, the DNA being its workforce. Only through the principle of divine love can we become the ascended being. Planetary ascension, which translates living beings and Earth to another vibratory world dimension, is only an offshoot of the true ascension of the heart. According to my conversations with Thoth, the soul incarnate moves through various stages of perceiving and activating within the male-female positive-negative charge. As these stages progress, that which was in the plus charge now operates in the minus charge, and vice versa, only to switch back again at another level of energetic contact. This movement is determined by the stages of awareness and the specific focus of that awareness as the current moves through the realms of duality. Consequently, what we are currently experiencing as male and female embodiments is registering in the opposite polarity on another level of being. Therefore, souls incarnate in a male body can access the female polarity of their being and work with their feminine heart arcs. Conversely, a soul currently in a feminine embodiment may access their masculine polarity and more fully integrate the male heart pole. In meditation, see yourself becoming a living on or sacred heart arc. Both females and males may accomplish this. For the woman, place yourself at the center of the heart arc in the vault of heaven position or womb of the goddess creatrix. The male may draw upon this feminine vessel by assuming the solar rays of Hu, providing the strength for the female heart, body, and mind, shining into the holy womb of generation. Whether you be male or female in this incarnation, you can now feel the presence of unity as the heart arc becomes a viable vessel within you. In your personal meditations with the heart arc, find your own path of integrity into her chambers of sovereign wisdom and creation. May the glory light of her sight be upon you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. And the Ark of the Heart is, when I watched this, at first I thought this is going to be deeper than I'm really able to comprehend. But as I tuned into it, there was just a kind of harmonic landing of this for me. I think that's what happens when we are exposed to a deep truth. It may be somewhat complex, but it is an explication of a metaphysical reality that's actually part of us. And that's so true of this video we've just seen. So, Maia, do you want to just start to explore what's been shared here?
I do, but first I'd like to make this little statement, and you're probably going to hear me say it in more than one video because there are going to be other people watching different videos, and I think it's really important. And that is that when I first started this work, and we're talking about, consciously started it probably, well, what was it, 1967, 68 or whatever. By the time I was actually working with Thoth, 77, somewhere in there, it was said to me from Thoth, from the sources, that, well, in even before then, back between 67 and 77, I would, share this with people. Of course, remember, no internet. I would share it in letters or in face-to-face. People would come over and I'd share the information with them, and they just kind of go, and I felt very, to me it made perfect sense, but I felt very despondent because I was like, well, you're giving me this, nobody understands it, so what the hey, and they said, well, eventually more people will understand it, which of course is the fact now, many more people do, but they said also, because I said, well, maybe I should bring it down, maybe I should just talk, and he said, no, don't do that, because you want to bring people up to that consciousness. You don't want to go down to where they feel it's safe and comfortable. There are other people that will help them do that, but that's not your job. My job is to stay on a particular level. That doesn't mean I have to get, I do work with it to get it not quite so esoteric. I bring it down as much as I can without degrading that energy field, because my role in this plan, apparently, is to set a particular bar and bring people to that level of consciousness. That doesn't mean that they have to understand everything that's being said ever. But it's a matter of energy. It's a matter of experience the energy. And when the energy is received into the ark of the heart, then it starts matriculating throughout the body, and it eventually arrives in the brain, and in some particular state it's the right state for you. And so that is, he said, that's the nature of what's called the mysteries, or the mystery schools. Not that it's something that's secretive. Yes, at certain stage in time, historically, they did make it secretive because either they were going to get killed if they put it out there, or or other nefarious reasons. But basically, the understanding of mysterium, he gives me the word mysterium teachings, the mysterium teachings of Thoth, because the mystery means that it is concealed until it is revealed, and that you bring it into your being, and you don't know the whole thing yet, and you're not concerned about that. The initiate receives. The initiate does not question in the moment. The initiate does not ponder. The initiate does not try to memorize phrases. The initiate receives she opens the heart and receives. And once that has occurred, perhaps on several times, it begins, as I said, to move through the whole form, into the cells, into the pineal gland, most importantly, and then into the third eye, and into the brain, and the chakras. And then it starts making sense on the level that is core to the human experience. Now, everything else is peripheral. But we have been taught in our schools that we have to learn everything, all the details, and we have to memorize it so we can quote it. And you see, we've gotten off of the true essential nature of connecting to knowledge, and that's what becomes wisdom. You can't get wise through knowledge alone. You have to have that heart connection to it, and then you develop a wisdom. So I could go on, but I won't. But the point is, when I bring this forward to you, the audience, that is what I am attempting to do. What I was told in the very beginning, my kitty, what I was told in the very beginning, how to operate and how to work with it, and not to try to dissect it all and bring it down into little piecemeal pieces for people to digest. So I'm offering to you the experience of rising up, blue star rising up to the occasion and connecting to this material and all the material I present in that initiatic fashion. Okay, so that's my soapbox. Now, what was the question, Michael?
Oh, was there a question? No,
Oh,
it's this is really helpful what you're saying, Maya, because it describes, for example, my experience in being present to the Synergy Light Group work of our dear friend, Reverend William Buehler, the late William Buehler, and his partner, Dame Edie Cooper, and Johannine Templar also, that they did for many years. And I would, the few of these that I did attend, and afterwards in the analysis of what had come through, the level of metaphysical knowledge, information, overviews of the grids of Gaia and how what was coming through worked with this pole or that or this point in history, and we're integrating it. I was intended, like my brain would be sizzling as I was trying to absorb it. And I would think to myself, in the conventional way that you described, we're supposed to memorize stuff. I'm supposed to be able to quote this stuff. I'm supposed to be some kind of Templar leader here. I better be up on all this Templar science. But just finding my brain sizzling, and actually at a certain point, just sort of not going to sleep out of, yawn, boredom, but just my brain just having to sort of shut down because it's absorbing on the level that you're describing of just be receptive, let it sink in here, here, and here. Integration will come later. We're not surrendering our sovereignty. We're not, abnegating our mental capabilities of understanding and analyzing, but this is about being in receptive mode. And that's what I experienced when I watched this video was, if you wanted to play the skeptic, you could quibble and say, well, how does she know there's 6 of those rays over there? And what's this deal with the central thing in the middle? And then there's some masculine pillar or what, you can go there. Fine. Well, you're wasting your time, in being here then, because if you're able, as you say, as an initiate, simply to say, all right, I'm taking the time to listen to and receive information that is transparently being given by an inner plane source. So right there, it's not like I'm quibbling with something that I just saw in the Chicago Tribune and I want to check the facts and the sources. If you're here, you're open to this. So, and it's a challenge for me, particularly because a lot of my work has been about taking very dense material, say the Shakespeare authorship, history and controversy, presenting it in a way that's accessible and popular. But as you say, you received. This is not about bringing it down to where regular folks can get it. It's being brought in at this very high level for a reason. And over time, since you first started to receive this, people have gradually been rising to the level where we can begin to understand this. So I very much welcome this mode that you're reminding us all we can receive this in.
Yeah.
So do you want to continue about?
Yes. Now, bear in mind as I speak about these things that I'm planning to insert the core material that I'm just briefly touching on here into my series. The aspect of how the heart, the arc of the heart. I'm dyslexic, so okay, I'm just going to put it out there, and it's hard for me to say arc of the heart. I want to say heart of the ark. But anyway, arc of the heart
It
is
kind of works
central.
both ways, but yes, it's the
Yeah, it's better the other way.
arc of the heart.
Yeah, is central to the Grail mysteries. It is the Grail cup. Of course, Mary Magdalene carried the exemplification of the arc of the heart in living form to work with the male engendered Yeshua. So you can see a living dynamic there between the two of them. I know people have seen the Grail cup as being Mary Magdalene, and in a sense, it is on one level. It's also Mother Mary on another level. She was the feminine vessel that gave birth to this child. It's also, and it is actually, there really is a cup. According to Thoth, it's not some fancy, big chalice. It's a little cup. And he says it's under Glastonbury. You could add that to the picture. There's probably other things you could come up with. It would be a genuine a genuine representation of that energy of the Grail. But for me, as I was going over all of this, and Thoth on my shoulder, so to speak, I was seeing that the arc of the heart is the personification. It is the working system of the Grail in the human body and in the human experience. Now, as we're talking about all of this, just bear in mind, I said it in the video, but I want to say it again, that the male heart pillar is extremely important, and I'm going to do a whole video on that in my series. And it's important to understand that all men are connecting to the arc of the heart and on the etheric level, and all women are connecting to the male heart pillar on the etheric level. And of course, those of us women now, we're going to be men in other lives. Men are going to be women in other lives. So we're doing a little mirror here of where we're positioned with this dynamic concept. Okay. So I was guided by Thoth to go to my Temple Doors issue, what was it, 1997 issue, where we had just returned, Simeon and I had conducted a facilitation of a sacred journey to Egypt, the Sinai, and where else? Well, we kind of made some other stops, but those are the main two places. And so after we returned from that trip, I wrote an issue based on that journey and things that I received from Thoth, on the whole pattern and plan that journey revealed. And one of the things was about the 12 main Mazarothic mystery schools. Now, as I was going back to this material, being guided to, yesterday I mentioned it was, I realized that the reason I was is because these schools contained they were carrying the wisdom, the knowledge, the initiatic energy of the arc of the heart in their program and what they did. Now, it's important to understand that when we there's been a huge suppression of this information. And I haven't heard it from anyone else. It may be out there somewhere in some different language or something. I mean, a different, terminology. I don't know, but I haven't heard anything about an ark of the heart before. And the reason is, I asked both, well, what's the deal here? And he said that, well, it's a greatly suppressed knowledge, because it's so important that the archonic forces, if you want to call it that, the dark forces, the Nephilim forces, whatever, have been suppressing it, attempting to very strongly since day one. And day one in this sense would be when the Lord Melchizedek came from Venus to Earth. Remember, Venus is the guardian planet of Earth. Both these planets came from Blue Star Rigel, energetically, not the rocks and the soil, but the logos, the imprint, the souls, the consciousness, all of that. So Melchizedek came to Earth to establish the heaven houses, the 12 heaven houses of the zodiac. Now, this wasn't just an astrological click. This was much deeper than that. And in the process of doing that, and I've mentioned this before, so I'll try to be brief, but in the process of doing that, he brought a genetic template into play, and that meant that it had to be propagated, which it was, and I don't know exactly how it was, and I don't care to know, but it was. And the priestesses of the heaven houses were the mamas. They were the ones that brought the energy forth. But it was not just about that, of course. It had to do with the stellar consciousness coming through, radiating through the 12 points of our zodiacal system. And we're not speaking of, an astrology. We're speaking of a cosmic template, which of course astrology mirrors, but it's not the same thing. So the Ark of the Heart was at the core, the foundation of this work, because without activating that and keeping it fully activated, this could not take place. And the reason the genetics had to be brought into line there, and he brought this field, was because already on the planet, by the time he got there, which was a long time ago, already there was a deterioration of the spiritual dynamic that floods through the genetic system, the DNA. So he came to bring this, this template to say, here, let's put this chip in the computer because you're, wobbling here. So once he established the program, and this is what we call the Grail Families coming out of this genetic matrix, he went back to Venus. And that's when the other shoe dropped. I don't know exactly when, but sometime after that, I'm going to call them the archonic forces again, permeated this energy field and whispered in the ears, so to speak, of the priests, not all the priests, but some of them, that said, hey, wait a minute, how come we're not playing with this Ark of the Heart? We're the doers around here, but we don't get to get in on the really, close stuff here. Not where the power, we're not in the power seat. How come? We want to be there. And that, my friends, is where things really took a dip. And the main priestesses were murdered, and some of them escaped, and some of the good priests escaped with them. Most of them went through tunnels into Atlantis. Some of them, very selectively, were guided by ultra beings into the inner earth. We'll come back to that a little later. So that means that the Ark of the Heart mystery, let's call it that, the veiled goddess on her throne, Isis veiled, Isis unveiled. She was brought into hiding with the fleeing priestesses and priests. They reestablished the heaven houses in Atlantis, only to be brought down again. Now, there's probably thousands and thousands of years between these things, but this is what happened. So they were brought down again by the archonic forces, and this time, this was very close to the actual destruction of Atlantis and the rising of the ascension of the Isle of Ruta, where the main Ark of the Heart mysteries was contained into another dimension or semi-dimension. So then the Grail kings and queens, as Thoth calls them, they're not real rulers, but he refers to that metaphorically, and their families that had been begun by the Lord Melchizedek, the surviving families migrated, to other countries and kept going as much as they could. We still all have, most of us anyway, I imagine, have some of those genetics within us, probably everybody. So then we go back here to where I found these 12 main Mazarothic mystery schools. So this is very brief, but let me just read to you the definitions I have on Mazaroth and Mazaloth, okay? Because it's kind of a tricky language. Now, these are not Thothic words. This comes out of the Hebraic text, but these are Thothic definitions for those words, which are basically the same. It's its own little twist to it, So the greater worlds of light are known esoterically and scripturally as Mazaloth. Within the same context, the Mazaroth are the 12 zodiacal stations of light within which the earth currently resides energetically. So the Mazaloth is beyond that, and it is represented by the 13, the numeric 13. How that exactly works out, don't know exactly, but think of it as Mazaroth 13 and beyond the current world system 1 understanding. And Mazaroth is what we operate in now, the current zodiacal system. And when we think of the zodiacal system, we think of what we are perceiving in the cosmos. And that perception changes when you move from Mazaroth, a Mazarothic view, to a Mazalothic view. You actually see different stars in the sky, and your planet didn't go anywhere except where it's usually going. But that's another story. So, the 12 zodiacal stations of light within which the earth currently resides energetically. The worlds of Mazaloth, that's the 13 now, reside within a system of 13 heavens, as opposed to the system of 12 heavens the earth is currently within under the influences of the Mazaroth, the 12. The constellations are stellar thresholds, which comprise either the Mazaroth or the Mazaloth, form primary stellar archetypal images that, when combined in various arrangements, then form secondary, tertiary, and quaternary light images, which the creation worlds under the jurisdiction of that zodiacal system are then fashioned. Yeah, I know, that's a mouthful. But think of it this way. We are so connected to symbology. We couldn't operate without it. Our brains are just functioning in symbolic tribute to the spiritual powers within us. So there's a reason for that, because symbols are based on light inscripted forms, which I mentioned in the video about Dan Winter and Stan Tenen. They found out that physically, the electrical heart makes the symbols of the sacred Hebrew light language. And, all of this is going on inside the heart when you look at it in a certain dynamic and you see the spin. This is science. So think of that and think of how we operate within our 12 zodiacal system. We are operating with those spins, with those cursory, I can't say the word, spinning numbers and letters and forms that come out of the angelic imprint, because the angelic realm is what creates these forms. And when I'm saying that, I'm not speaking religious here. We're speaking about a quantum realm dynamic. It's a science. The angelics are scientific asterisks in the universe, so to speak. So I lost my place. Okay. I guess that's it. Okay, so now back to the Mazarothic mystery schools. Those are the mystery schools that work with the 12, right? Well, what did the heaven houses of Melchizedek, the 12? This is a complete pattern that keeps repeating itself through time and space on this planet. So even though the temples had been brought down, the Ark of the Heart had been suppressed, people had been scattered to the winds. The Grail families were all over the place. All of this going on. There's still this crucible. There's still this crucible that holds on to these sacred mysteries. And again, mysteries are not to be solved. Mysteries are to be breathed in, taken into the heart. So when the 12 schools that I talk about in my periodical, and I will go over a little bit in my series, they represented how the heart, the Ark of the Heart, was able to maintain its presence on the planet for a period of time. I could go on, but I think I'll pause a minute.
Okay. Yeah. So when we think about that gap of time between the last full-on suppression, it sounds like, a fairly violent one, which would have been around 12,000 years ago with the flood, the inundation, the time tsunami, call it what you will, the destruction of Atlantis, that the knowledge, the working knowledge, the actual working with the energies of the Ark of the Heart was largely lost, where before it had been practiced by the priestesses, aided by the priests, known by the people, the energies could be tuned in with, the correspondence of the energies of the Ark of the Heart as embodied in the priestesses could also be accessed by the people. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So that upon the dissolution, this essential energy of balancing for the spiritual reality of what it means to be human, for the balancing of masculine and feminine, expressed throughout an entire society and culture, right? Because that affects everything else. Once this is lost and deliberately suppressed by factions which decided that dominance was better for them than cooperation, that, it's the old dichotomy of service to the good of all or service to self at the cost to others. If you follow the arc of history down, to use arc in another sense, that was, according to the yugas, the beginning of a descending arc that we're just beginning to come out of in terms of the great year, as it's called. And so now, here we are, talking about it. We've just seen a video that names it, shows it, explains it, and also offers a way of working with these energies for ourselves. And I loved how you at the end, you gave what feels like just the beginnings of a way of working with these energies, from a meditative place to tune into what is essentially the Grail within us.
Yes.
Yes. That, to me is the great beauty of this in terms of its appeal to most folks. And by most folks, I mean, we're not all high metaphysicians who work at these high levels. And yet, if in an initiatic mode of receptivity, we allow this in, it'll land where it's supposed to land within us, such that we can begin to work with it. And that is a potentially transformative energy on a huge scale, right? Would that be accurate?
It is indeed. And it's also important to understand that, and this applies to just about everything of a spiritual nature, well, and also everything of a non-spiritual nature, is the way of the universe. And that is not about each individual person, what they acquire and learn, and so it's theirs. Everybody that receives gives. If you're receiving on a spiritual level, you're giving, you're putting it out into the universe. Even if you're a hermit living in a cave and you're not meditating, you're doing crossword puzzles instead.
or whatever,
Such a
But
sad thing to retreat to a cave to do crossword puzzles. I am a crossword yogi. Do not bother me for next 30 years in cave with crossword.
right, right. So, but the point was that, if you are truly in working with the spiritual energies, and you're doing it to the best of your ability, and you're putting it out there into the universe. You don't have to get on the soapbox and talk about it. You don't have to teach it in seminars. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't do that. I mean, that's good too, but that's not where the basic energy flows from. It flows from placing it into the greater dynamic through the heart. It's a radiating system. If you look at our star, our planet, our sun is a star, and any star, but I'm taking ours just for the heck of it. And we know now what an electromagnetic pulse it is, what a field it is, and how it operates, and all these energies coming out of it. And it's swirling. We know now that it doesn't go like this, it goes like this. All of these things that are going on, it's radiating. We have an atoma above the high heart. It's in the high heart, connected to the real pumping heart. We have an atoma in the central earth. We have an atoma that is our sun, and we have another atoma and another in the central sun of the universe, and on and on and on. All of these atomas are connected. They're all central energy systems. So when you are working with your arc of the heart, the way that you feel guided to work with it, taking a little maybe from what I've said and taught and shown, but from your own energy self experience, you are lining it up, and you're connecting to all those atomas, and the power is tremendous. So right now, especially when we think of where we are at this time in history on this planet, to be able to activate to a much greater degree the arc of the heart on a world scale, not by telling everybody to do it and going out and preaching it and going to all these different countries and talking about it. No, by those of us who wish to do this, who feel dedicated to do this, working with those energies, it starts a ripple of light moving through the planet. Certainly the more people that do it, the better, but this isn't the perfect world. So let's don't get too concerned about that. Let's stay in the center of our beings. We are the architects of this planet. And indeed, we're in a way, we're the architects of the universe, because we see the universe and we experience the universe and we create the universe through our own holographic field. And Thoth calls it, oh gosh, I can't remember the name he uses. It's one of those many Thoth words. But he says it connects, groups connect energetically, even if they don't know one another, with like-minded and like purposes, and they create these little bubbles of energy. And once you've created one of those little bubbles start to vibrate and grow, because you have one or more gathered together, so to speak. So when we work with this system, just be aware that the intrinsic value of it is not what it can do for you, but what you can do for the total, the whole. And, it's important for you too, of course. I'm not diminishing that, but just remember that you're doing it as a gift to the whole. And if you're more aware of that, it works better for both parties.
Yeah, I love that echo, as it is, of the famous, quote by John F. Kennedy of "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." He goes on in that quote to say, "Ask what together we can do for the freedom of humanity."
Yes.
Yes. The whole world. Yes. But that I love the power of that, because, like, for example, in some of my earlier work with, the movement to establish a new human rights court, lineal restoration of the original Templar order. I mean, it was very much about that, we've restored the true inner esoteric teachings of the Templars, and we are, get a website and get membership and get you learn this stuff, and then you move on to the next stage, and then we give you this ribbon and that title and this oath, and then you're on the next, and then we're growing worldwide, and we're able to pay our bills, and we're bringing in money, and by gosh, we're the Templars. Now, I'm not knocking that. Obviously, there's knowledge to be shared. There's sacred symbology to be shared, and it's all good, and it all has its place. And I would, I gained a great deal from my study in those years, and yet the transformative power is in this stream that you describe. That ripple effect across the planet of souls working with these essential energies of the heart, of the Grail. And when I think about our Templar community in Colorado, the Johannine Templars, and as we may have shared with you, Johannine is the mystical branch of Christianity. You'll find it in Wikipedia. There's the Petrine out of Rome, the Roman Church, and then the Johannine was thought of as the more mystical branch through John the Beloved Apostle, John of Patmos, or the John who's the author of Revelations. They often seem to be one and the same, and scholars differ, but the mystical. And so what we're doing here, and we will focus on this in another program. I mean, yes, we have a Johannine Templar order, and its essential practice is what Maia is sharing here. If you want to go back and look at all the various sacred technologies of the Templars, from working with the ley lines and the grids and sacred architecture, and explore the mysteries of the Temple of Solomon or Rosslyn Chapel, that's all beautiful and important. And yet it feels like now, today, given what we're dealing with, we need to share the most essential and powerful inner work with the Grail, which was always the heart of the Templar work, with the True Grail, in a way that each of us can do. And insofar as the Johannine Templars have a teaching to share, a practice to share, a way of life to share, it's really about this. Mm-hmm. Yes, we use the symbols of the sword and the Grail. Yes, we champion the code of chivalry in its original high sense, which is really just, the highest universal values of all humanity in various times and places. It's not just about, the temple rule of Saint Bernard de Clairvaux from, 1136 AD, and this is what the chivalrous, the chivalric knights of old. No, this is the high universal values of humanity. So we can do all of that, and we do. And we believe that we are in touch with an authentic Templar stream of spiritually transformative practice and belief and humble service. Or at least we're doing the best we can in that regard. So it's one of the things that really inspires me about what you brought forth here, Maia, because it seems to tie so much together. Is that your feeling also?
Oh, completely, Michael. You said it beautifully. As we're talking about this back and forth, I'm feeling an energy present. It wants me to say something, but I'm not sure what it wants me to say. So I'm kind of like being with it to see, and I'm inspired by what you were saying there. It seems that it has to do with the current stage of events, and not just one thing, not the infection, just that, not the political scene, just that, but all these things having an underlying current of a misplaced heart dynamic. And I think that's kind of a no-brainer. It's not something that just about anybody can see when they look at it all. But if you take it into the context of the arc of the heart and the great suppression of that principle and knowledge, through all these years. But it hasn't just been the suppression of the knowledge. It has been the suppression of the energy field, because the arc of the heart, again, we have an energy system. We're energy beings. And we have it depends, the arc of the heart depends on a centralizing energy core. And that core is not in us, that's where we are, that is where our heart arc operates. But where does it come together? Where does it network to centralize? And that is in some, you could call it in a kether, a crown point, where everyone on the planet is connected with their arcs of the heart at this crown point. And it's not a location on the planet, of course, it's a place, a vector that connects us all. But it has an energetic field. And that field, because we are electrical beings, it's not in some just etheric place and that's it. It has to come down into the physical. And that's where it can be breached. That's where it can be compromised. And not just as individuals, because of the things we do or we don't do in life. Sure, that certainly adds to it all. But there is a nexus that can be gone, and it can't be cut in two, but it can be squeezed so that the life force starts being drained and suffocated in that dynamic. And this is what I'm being shown right now. And this has been occurring for a long time, before this country was even founded on one level or another, as I said, way back to Melchizedek. But now is the last stand. I'm being guided to say that this seizure on this what I want to say, a ventricle or vein of the heart arc to the central nexus, it's being untangled, it's being loosened to let the blood flow, to let the energy flow come through. And yet it's its last final stranglehold. So all the forces that would command the day in suffocating it are turning red in the face as they're bearing down to hold on to that juncture. Sounds scary, and it is. But at the same time, why are they so desperate? And this is what Thoth is telling me, because their day is coming to an end. There are many factors involved. We're not going to go off on that story on this video. But this he wants me to say right now. The heart, the arc of the heart, working with that principle, even just a few of us, understanding that it exists. You don't have to understand all the little diagrams and everything. This helps free up that energy. And you would think, how could just a few people do that? But you have a system that's waiting to receive the tickle of the feather that activates it. And we can tickle. We can't come in with blazing guns, but we can take that little feather and we can tickle the system, and it can start, help to move it into the right direction. And this is what he's saying that's so important about this right now. And of course, there are many other parts of this dynamic besides the arc of heart. We've discussed them, and there'll be more to discuss. They're all very important. But this one, he says, is that you can't go anywhere until you release that grasp on the ventricle of the heart there. And this is what he wants me to, to state right now, the importance of it.
Well, it's certainly, music to my heart, that truth, because we do see so much that is genuinely alarming going on right now. And I keep telling people and keep telling myself, well, light is winning, good guys are winning. And that's why things are so scary right now, because the bad guys are desperate. And it's like, and then I look around me and I go, man, I hope that's true.
Yeah, I know. I have my day.
Because it's just, it's pretty scary. But it's reassuring on a lot of levels just to hear this truth acknowledged. For example, in my spiritual path and practice with Self-Realization Fellowship, and I spent a lot of years in Southern California, and in Los Angeles, and there was a wonderful monk, very saintly old monk named Brother Bhaktananda, that I was fortunate enough to be around him a lot in those years. And of course, it's LA, it's Hollywood, and people come out to LA to realize their destiny, or to be the great musician or the great singer or the great actor. And oh, I'm spiritual too, and I'm going to go meditate. And so Brother would get a lot of people coming into him in counseling, and say, well, Brother, I really feel that I'm here for a great purpose, that God has given me some this work to do, and I need to find what it is, and when am I going to be able to move into my great this great purpose. And Brother would just say, well, meditation is the work, it is the great purpose, and one soul meditating quietly in his or her room and communing deeply with the divine, working with these energies in the heart. I mean, was one of the things the Brother used to say, was when you are chanting in devotion to Spirit, visualize that your heart has a mouth. Visualize the devotional feeling and the words coming literally from the mouth of the heart, as he used to say. And I said, and that energy of just you alone in your room, or some of the more deeply developed yogis, well, such as Brother himself, though he was very humble about it, that energy is transformative across the planet of one soul, ripples across human consciousness, ripples into the the planetary genius, ripples out. Just this program right here, you and I talking about this, your beautiful video, telling the story, the long arc of the history, all of it, it's okay. How many subscribers do we have? We've just started. How many viewers are seeing this? We've just started. How many will see it down the road? Hundreds, thousands? We don't know. And yet, this is being seeded, and perhaps a better way to put it would be, as you say, it's a not just a ripple, it's a wave moving across the ocean of our planetary consciousness, because this ancient truth of the heart of who we are, what our divine origin is, and how it can be worked with, the restoration, the reawakening of that knowledge is going to prove to be perhaps just as powerful as the meditational miraculous power of an awakened saint, alone in his or her room.
Yeah. Well, and also Thoth is mentioning here that as we progress through time, and time isn't an illusion, it's a creative field that we have developed for our purposes, and it's a part of our consensual reality. And as we travel through time together, we are at different junctures, at different points in the whole perspective. So something that it was applicable even 10 years ago, but let's say 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, has a different insertion field now. We could bring it back. We could be doing things now that would have much more results than if we did them 50 or 20 or 100 years ago or whatever, not because of the cultural stigmas. I'm talking about energy, that time allows certain processes at certain times. And the reason for that is that time is connected to our, what Thoth is calling right now, the new Thothic term here, spectral reality. And the spectral reality is a spectrum that we embrace in our reality field. So we're looking this way, but we've got a little more over here and a little more over here. 10 years from now, it's going to be a little wider, then a little wider, then a little wider, because it's actually expanding. It has to expand in order to, again, be able to contract. We go to contraction, we go to expand. Maybe this has to do with the Kali Yuga stuff. I don't know. I'm not too into that, but I mean, I don't understand it that well. But he's talking about spectral reality. It's like there's a spectrum. And time, chronology, is the servant, not the commander, but the servant of that condition. So we are in. That said, we right now we are in an incredible place on that field, on that spectrum, and it's one of those places. Thoth is telling me right now that it's like a pooling of energy. You go along and you have these little frequency openings, da 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 of the spectrum, and then all of a sudden you have and it's kind of a little pool. And you're in a little pool for a while, you're dog paddling around, and then whoosh, you're into another part of the spectrum and you do that again. So we're in a pool right now. I don't know how often this occurs. I don't know. I didn't ask, but it's not too often. I mean, it's not every day by that means. And so in this pool, he's saying like it's maybe ever several hundred years or so. And sometimes it goes as long as 1,000. And this one hasn't pooled like this for over 1,000 years. So we're in it now. And he said, usually when you're in one of these pools, the mana hits the fan. And so that's what's happening.
Mana hits the fan. That's the best euphemistic version of that phrase I've ever heard. The mana hits the fan. So when the mana hits the fan, people, the holy planet of
So then you're in the pool, because it's not a relaxing experience. It's not. The waters aren't rough. You just have to be able to stay in your center where the waters are calm, because all the sides are the whirlpools. All the way around it's like whirl, 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 and you have to find that center. You're not hiding from the whirlpools. You're merely seeking balance with them. So, that said, we're in our little pool right now, all of us together here. And he's saying in the pool, that's the magic time, because you can actually make a bigger difference with what you place inside that pool during that period of time. And so those of us who, let's say, have a little bit more awareness than some others who are a little more frantic and not seeing the bigger picture, we can hold that coordination for many. It's like if we have the buoyancy in the pool and we can hold that coordination, then those that are sort of flailing around on the sides and getting caught up in the whirlpools, we can draw them in to the pool. I'm not saying this is a perfect science. I'm just saying that this is the potential. And the more people we can draw in, not by proselytizing or saying, hey, come over here, but just by holding the center, we can really work magic right now that we couldn't have even last year. Mm-hmm. Coming to a crescendo now.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to keep in our centers. We don't have to be perfect, but just keep in our centers and realize there's a great bigger picture going on here, much greater than in our, reality that we're seeing here at this time. And it's magical, it's powerful, and it is acting for the benefit of the full light spectrum. And that's what we wish to embrace.
All right. Well, we've reached the end of our time, and we've got another group of friends coming into my space here very shortly. So rather than be disrupted, I'd like to use do you want to go ahead and say your closing message to everyone? Just a little.
You always forget to mention these things, and there's some new things here. So I'm just going to say them, read them, whatever. But in the links below, we have something new. It's called the Blue Star Rising Forum. It's on Facebook. And in the link, it'll take you right to that group if you want to be a part of it, because that group will allow you to discuss, ask questions, comments, whatever on the shows that we are placing here. So we hope you'll join us in that. And of course, I'm always saying this, but it's kind of important to us. If you'll please like our video at the like button, because the more likes we get, the higher we go to reach other people out in that's the way the YouTube thing works. And if you'll click the bell, you'll get the notifications. And of course, we'd love to have you subscribe if you haven't already. There was something else I wanted to say, but I can't quite remember what it was. So I guess that's it.
All right. So thanks everybody for being with us. And please, share this around if you enjoyed it. And we look forward to having you with us again next time. So God bless us, everyone. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye for
Goodbye.
now.